Trance is Danny Boyle's latest movie. Now, Danny Boyle obviously brought us like Slumdog Millionaire, 127 Hours, Sunshine, which I actually think is his best movie, Trainspotting, Shallow Grave. He's one of the sort of best English film directors working today, and Trance is his latest film from 2013, which basically follows the character of Simon, played by James McAvoy, who is an art dealer and auctioneer involved in a robbery, hits his head and forgets where he stashed a painting that was going to be stolen. So he's kidnapped by the gang responsible, who can't get him to remember because he's suffering from amnesia, so they hire a hypnotherapist played by Rosario Dawson, as you can see there on the cover, to try and unlock his memories. Now, Trance is a film that I went in sort of cautiously optimistic, because as much as I love Danny Boyle, and I really do, Sunshine is such a great movie and so is Trainspotting, I didn't really overly like Slumdog Millionaire and 127 Hours from a perspective that they're films that when I watched in the cinema, really enjoyed them, but just couldn't watch them sort of more than once. So Trance, I was cautiously optimistic, and I have to say, for the first sort of 45 minutes of this movie, I thought it was really interesting and a great sort of spin and a new interesting take on the heist movie genre. But I have to say that after that it lost its way. Now, the leader of the gang who kidnapped James McAvoy's character is played by Vincent Cassel, who's always very watchable. And I have to say that actually the performances in this film are absolutely fine. You know, all the people in it are pretty good. You know, there's no sort of weak link in there. The problems that I have with this movie come from the script. I feel like they had a good idea for a heist movie, but didn't know how to end it. So you have scenes, you know, in the first act of Rosario Dawson trying to unlock James McAvoy's memories, and it goes into sort of how hypnotherapy works, and she also tries to hypnotise other members of the gang as well to assist in James McAvoy's hypnotherapy, and it goes to some interesting places, you know, about unlocking your deepest fears, and it blurs the line between, you know, what's real and what could be sort of post-hypnotic suggestion, and it's a film that, as you're watching it, you're thinking this could very well be Danny Boyle's Inception, his sort of spin on this genre, and tonally it felt quite similar. However, that's when it starts to lose its way. I have to say, in the sort of second half of this movie, the drop in quality is quite dramatic. The reason being is the script. How do I put this? The script sort of gets its head stuck up its own arse, and it's clear that they don't know how to end it or how to reveal what's been happening all along, because needless to say, and it's quite evident from the first few scenes, that there's going to be a twist ending. You know, you can feel that there's going to be a twist. The way that they reveal the twist is basically having a character speak and narrate over footage that we've already seen earlier in the film. And while, you know, some filmmakers can do that and make it interesting, this film, it just feels quite like a lazy exposition dump towards the end of the film, and it's just, well, we're basically just seeing the last sort of half hour that we've already watched, but we're seeing it again with somebody narrating over it, explaining to us what was happening, and it just seems quite lazy. I'm sure there must have been a more creative or inventive way to do that. But they go for the sort of the quick way out, I felt, and it just felt like such an anticlimax as well. Another thing, while the performances in this are fine, the script really makes all the characters quite hateable. I think the only person in it that you'll end up liking is Rosario Dawson's character, but our main character, James McAvoy, he's quite frankly a hateable person in this, as are pretty much all the members of Vincent Cassel's gang. There's not much for us to latch onto, and it's not until that exposition dump at the end that you really relate to Rosario Dawson's character. So it's quite, from that perspective, I found to be quite a cold movie, and not one that I could really relate to or sort of get into. And it was such a shame, given that the first sort of 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, was so promising, and I thought, you know, this is going to give us something that we've not seen before. Stylistically and tonally, it feels like the sort of film that Danny Boyle would have made in the 90s. It doesn't feel like one of his latest films, because I think you could make an argument that stylistically, you know, Sunshine, Slumdog Millionaire and 127 Hours feel you could pick them out of a lineup as being a Danny Boyle movie, but they are inherently sort of different to his earlier work, whereas this film feels a little bit more laboured and a little bit more like it was made earlier in his career almost. But an aspect of it I did like was seeing, you know, London sort of on the big screen. London is a fantastic setting for films of this nature and this tone, so it was nice to see Danny Boyle sort of return to London, but it's just a shame that the film wasn't better. I have to say that even though I had moderated expectations going into this, it still ended up being one of the most disappointing films of the year for me. The reason being is the first sections of it are so promising, and for it to lose its way so dramatically, it made it a real disappointment. So unfortunately, I can't really recommend Trance. I mean, it's rendered as nothing more than a sort of curio. So if you're interested in Danny Boyle's work, by all means give it a spin, but there's not enough in there to justify sort of going out and buying it, for example. So Trance was a disappointing movie that had a lot of potential. The performances are fine, but the characters are fairly hateable. It's ultimately just a sort of a bland, disappointing movie. So I can't really recommend Trance, unfortunately.